Welcome to this latest edition of Silicon Grapevine. I'm Nitin Dahad, and today my guest is Sailesh Chittipeddi, who's an executive vice president at Renesas Electronics. Sailesh, hello.
Hello, Nitin, and a pleasure to be with you as always.
Thank you, and yeah, you too. We've spoken many times at trade shows and various events, but I wanted to get a little bit more about you and your background. That's the idea of this series. So tell me, first of all, tell me a little bit about your career. Yeah, how did you get into electronics?
Yeah, absolutely, Nathan. And again, we've had numerous occasions to chat, and this is probably the first time go a little bit more in depth into my career. So just a little bit about myself. I was certainly educated in what's called a convent or a Catholic school, if you will, for the early part of my education. I finished my bachelor's, came to the United States, obviously got my PhD at the Ohio State University, and then I joined Bell Laboratories, which was one of the most exciting aspects.
Before you do that, how did you get into studying electronics in the first place, or was that in after school, or?
Yeah, so I got absolutely. So I started in physics. What always fascinated me about physics was the ability to understand about nature and to solve problems. And so I've been fascinated about the universe and everything associated with it, and understanding the origins of the universe and why we came about. And the natural extension of that was to get into more advanced physics. And I started, believe it or not, with high energy physics when I started my PhD work. And unfortunately, I figured that it was going to take a decade or so before the chambers that needed to be built got built. And so as a matter of convenience, more than anything else, I got myself into solid state physics so I could finish it on a timeline that would kind of make sense and allow me to launch my career. And so I made the transition from high energy physics into solid state physics. And that kind of launched my career, if you will, into the electronics arena. I was fortunate enough to get into Bell Labs, when it was actually a pretty exciting place to be a part of the journey. And I started working on...
So what year was that, roughly?
That was in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, I joined Bell Laboratories. And it was a very exciting time to be there. And you had an opportunity to learn about just about every facet of whether it's dark matter in the universe, or whether it's laser physics, or whether it was the most advanced CMOS technologies of that time, which is very fascinating for me. So the ability to learn... So
you're probably as fascinated by black holes as me.
Exactly. And I continue to be, Nathan. So the sense of curiosity and the desire to learn was very much fulfilled in the early parts of my career when I started working at Bell Laboratories. And some of the most brilliant minds happened to work there. And it was just fascinating. We'd have something called a brown bag lunch series where these speakers would come in and talk about the various topics of interest. It was great to soak in all this knowledge, right? I mean, you're a young person going into this atmosphere where you have the ability to learn from probably the leaders globally in terms of the respective arenas. So the breadth and the depth that you could absorb at the same time was a rare feat, and something I think in the current times is far more challenging for the younger individual getting into this field.
And so, like from schoolboy, you were into physics, and then that sort of took you into sort of going into Bell Labs. So was that easy to sort of get into there? Because it must have been quite a very competitive time.
Yeah, it was. It absolutely was. And I think what used to happen in those days is Bell Labs used to come into various universities and interview a bunch of candidates. And I was fortunately amongst a select few that got picked into joining.
You were the bright one.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I'd say I was a halfway smart individual, if you will. And they happened to pick me. And I happened to be fortunate enough to work with a group of people that were extremely smart, that went on actually subsequently, Nathan, believe it or not, to found various elements of the Taiwan semiconductor ecosystems. People that you might more commonly have heard of, people like Mark Liu and stuff, who are obviously more senior class than me, but went on and is now the chairman of TSMC, and a host of others that I had the good fortune early on in my career to interact with.
So what was your first?
My first job was really CMOS technology development. And at that time, I was working, and this will probably date me a little bit. It was a 0.8 micron CMOS technology. And it was the technology development aspect of it that I got what was called process integration. So you're putting together a sequence of processes to develop the whole technology stack. That's how I started. But before that, I took one step and worked with the failure analysis team, looking at memories and kind of identifying where different kinds of bit failures occur in a static memory, because a static memory certainly goes into most integrated circuits anyway for various applications. That was my starting point, and that's where I learned, actually, believe it or not, about scanning electron microscopes and the various technologies for that are used for failure analysis capabilities, including Auger analysis, ESCA, and so on. And things that you learn about in physics that are actually being applied in a real life scenario. That was fascinating to me.
Did you then look at sort of using equations for real life stuff like playing soccer or?
Exactly. Everything that you learned in your physics books, you kind of got to apply in real life. And that's a rare opportunity and something that to this day I cherish. And I used that sort of, at that time, the other interesting thing that occurred was we ourselves were going through a phase of, obviously, Bell Laboratories developed the technologies, and then AT&T Microelectronics, which was into the manufacturing business, would take those technologies and put it into production, if you will. And obviously, there's always this mindset of, hey, you're tossing something over the fence. You do not know if it's going to yield or not. So they started to move more from a cradle to grave kind of mindset. And that's how I made the switch at that point in time from device development into manufacturing. But the good thing was I also had an ability, I also had the opportunity, if you will, to rotate a little bit, do some early design, learn about design in my career, and started working on ESD circuits and what we do in terms of implementation. So to increase the background for myself, and then move into an operational environment, if you will. And we had multiple facilities globally, so I had the opportunity to work across many locations and learn about everything that we thought was esoteric but was hard to manufacture, if you will. And that kind of made for an interesting journey in itself.
And I mean, looking at your sort of history and your profile, I think a big chunk of it is basically Conexant, and then obviously Renesas, through the acquisitions.
Right.
So, are you sort of a career sort of a Renesas guy?
No. So the journey from AT&T was itself interesting, and I'll spend a minute talking about how I got to Conexant and then into Renesas. And if you will, AT&T, I spent a good bit of my chunk there, which morphed itself into Lucent Technologies and subsequently into Agere Systems. So the opportunity to actually work for three different companies, not essentially changing locations, if you will. And Agere Systems was kind of at or near the process of being at the end of its journey of being acquired by LSI at that point in time. And I made the switch over to Conexant Systems. And at Conexant Systems was a very interesting journey, moving, of course, first part is moving from the East Coast of the United States to the West Coast of the United States that allowed me to make that transition. And I'm happy I did. The opportunity to really expand into manufacturing operations was a good part of the journey there. And one of the challenges certainly at Conexant Systems, and this is where I would say I learned a tremendous amount and the ability to implement everything that I learned earlier in my career into an operating executive role. And that to me is something that has a profound and a deep impact on everything that followed. Because Conexant was going through a period of enormous transformation. The company had grown and during the process had acquired a tremendous amount of debt. And the need to resolve that debt and successfully lead the company out of what was a Chapter 11 situation, as you know, probably less than 5% of the companies ever emerged on the other side, was one of the most challenging parts of my career. I wouldn't recommend it, but it's certainly something I had a tremendous opportunity to learn. And the company was in the process of taking in-source manufacturing and moving it outsourced. And I subsequently grew into that role. I did everything from marketing to sales to repositioning the company, became the chief executive officer. And then during a change into private equity ownership, I moved over to integrated devices technology, where I was the EVP and the head of technology. And then Renesas came knocking. They acquired Renesas. Certainly, I took over a very interesting, in a part of an interesting point in Renesas's journey, where they'd fallen behind on the microcontroller roadmap, as you know. We were behind on the ARM-based microcontrollers. And in a very short order, we fixed that problem. We redefined our microprocessor roadmaps and made ourselves highly competitive and started gaining share and so on. So I think it's been a rewarding and a fulfilling career with tremendous amount of challenges along the way. And that's what's benefited my learning.
Yeah, you're probably at the top of your game now, really, at the moment, with all that sort of
experience. Yeah, exactly. But been blessed to have the opportunity to implement what you learn. Right, few people have the opportunity to deal with a range of challenges that have been sent my way. And to deal with it successfully is something that I've been fortunate.
And let's to go a little bit into sort of what sort of makes you excited about life. Apart from work, what else do you do?
Well,
you see, because you seem to be a workaholic.
Like most of us. But I'd say, nature treks are certainly something that interests me a lot. As you can tell, when I started my career, it was about physics, and now it's about nature and learning about nature. So I tend to be curious. I tend to go on long nature walks. I used to be an avid fan of tennis, and in my youth, certainly cricket, like most folks. But that has kind of evolved a little bit more into, I still, like to occasionally go out, watch a tennis game or two, although I'm not very good at it anymore. But certainly the ability to go out for nature walks, any ability to go out and tune out the 24/7 kind of environment we're all caught up in excites me. Or just simply going out in the evening and looking out at the stars and realizing how insignificant we are in the larger scheme of things is something that helps me put life in perspective, right? And that I'd say is the single most important thing for me.
Well, yeah, I think we'll come to looking at how insignificant we are in the context of AI later. But coming back to cricket, so you'll be following the World Cup, I guess, which is happening.
Yes, which is I do, and I mean, it's I haven't been of late in sync with it as much as I probably should be, but I do enjoy watching it from a distance. Yeah.
Because in the US, it's not been followed so much, and I know it's actually evolving a lot more with the
It's
the
evolving
cricket
a lot more.
tournaments coming up in certain states.
Exactly, and a lot of I mean, the interesting thing is a lot of CEOs of companies much larger than Renesas are actively interested in sponsoring leagues and so on. So I think that's something that's going to get a hold in fairly short order in the U.S. as well. And I wouldn't be surprised to see some major leagues crop up here as well in the not too distant future.
Well, I have actually read, I think, that in sort of financial newspapers that the US equivalent of the IPL is in its infancy right now. It's
coming. Exactly. And so I think it'll be a few years, but I think you may be able to absorb some cricket broadcasts from the U.S. as opposed to elsewhere in the world.
Exactly. So coming back to the world of that we are in now, and I know Renesas has made quite a few acquisitions and sort of from dialogue to the AI stuff.
Yes.
What's I mean, we're in this whole every conference I go to, every event I go to, it's around sensing and analytics, and then those analytics involve the AI. How do you see everything evolving? Are we all going to be dependent on so much tech that we can't do anything, or what?
Well, we already are, Nathan, whether we recognize it or not.
Yeah.
Technology has impacted every aspect.
Okay, there's two aspects to that, actually. One is the actual technology, but then societal as well. Then
and I mean certainly, well, we can get caught up in the technology aspects of it. From I'd say from the interesting aspects that are going to reshape us, right? Is while we talk about AI today, a lot of what is occurring in AI in a decade or so from now, my view is it'll impact every facet of our life, much as voice recognition and so on has pervaded every aspect. Today, we don't even think about Siri. We don't think about any of these things, but those are really AI technologies, right, that have implemented on a large scale that are impacting us. And I think there'll be other similar features of AI that'll creep into our lives. And we won't even talk about AI as a separate topic. I think it'll just become something that's intuitive to the younger generations, much as a smartphone. People don't even think today when they're using a smartphone, right, as to what it took and the journey of what it took to get here. And I think AI is going to be something extremely similar to it, where it'll impact every facet of our life. And the notion of a personal assistant and so on would become much more a reality and impact us, hopefully for the better. And certainly, I'm an optimist. I don't fall into the pessimist camp of AI doing all dark and unexpected things. I certainly think the better aspect of humans will take hold, and we'll find a way of using AI to our advantage overall. But that's one aspect. Certainly, the other aspect is ubiquitous sensing, as you mentioned. And I think that's going to impact our lives in very many different ways, right? And the ability, really, we deal with so much information, Nathan, that the ability to deal with data, make it into actionable information, is going to be more and more essential with the data that's created, right? today, nearly 80% of the data is dark data that we just don't discard because we don't know how to translate it into useful information. So think about the potency of the ability to take that data and make it into useful information, right? And personalize it in the context of a human being. It could be potent, and that's something that will impact our lives for the next decades to come.
So it's interesting. I was at a Silicon Catalyst at our incubator launch event for ChipStart in the UK, and there were 12 companies pitching in the incubator, and although like all of them were addressing AI, none of them mentioned AI. They were talking about high-performance computing. They were talking about computing memory, trying to figure out how to make more efficient sort of use of that channel between memory and processing, and lots of other things. So we're not actually talking about AI anyway. So you're right there. But then the other thing,
exactly.
The other thing is, I think Jeffrey Hinton in 60 Minutes talked about why AI was scary. I mean, he was really talking about it in a very different way about how we should be worried. The average human being probably doesn't know which way to think.
Exactly. And I saw that piece in 60 Minutes, which I thought was pretty interesting on his perspective. But I think human nature always tends to find a way to its better sides, right? So, and I assume eventually we'll find a way of making AI for the improvement of people's lives far more than the destructive aspects of it, which can always play a role. And I think that's what's got us this far. And I'm in the camp that humanity will continue to evolve using AI as a vehicle rather than AI is going to take us over camp, if you will.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to ask you, because in terms of your role, what does it entail? I mean, because you're involved in quite a lot of things. I mean, every time we get asked to do an interview, it's always you're involved. So there's lots of things you're involved in.
Yeah. So I mean, look, I've been fortunate. We have a dynamic chief executive officer, Toshi Shibata, who's kind of educated at Harvard. And I think one of the benefits has been trying to globalize the company. And that has certainly been an important aspect of why Renesas has sprung more to the forefront as opposed to being a traditional Japanese company, if you will. And that aspect of globalization has made a tremendous amount of difference in the way we think about things and how we should approach different markets. And he's been aggressive and has pushed us to be aggressive, to step out beyond our comfort zones, if you will, and to get into the next level as a company. So he set a fairly ambitious target of being over 20 billion in revenue, being in the top 3 embedded computing companies globally, and drive market capitalization by close to 6x versus where we were in 2022, all of which are very, very ambitious, aspirational targets, if you will. And I think that sets the course for the company in terms of where we should go and what we should be doing as we look ahead in time. And, it's not only just on the front of the technology and what we acquire, but even beyond that, getting into things like silicon carbide manufacturing, in expanding our scale of manufacturing into power electronics when it comes to automotive, which is a big focus for us, obviously. And those kinds of things are something that he's been pushing. And it's been quite a transformative journey for this company. And I think we're still in the early stages of the transformation of what Renesas will be over the next several years.
And obviously you've been on quite an acquisition sort of trail, but what's that big vision for Renesas? What is it you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah, so it's a good question, and we don't think increasingly the way we're organized. We are no longer thinking ourselves as automotive, non-automotive, or anything of that sort, right? We think of ourselves as an outfit that is capable of providing solutions to improve our lives, right? On the broadest scale, that's how I think about it. And as does, I think, most leadership within the organization. So the ability to be able, with our embedded computing core, right, and build a periphery around it, whether it's connectivity, whether it's analog power, whether it's sensing, apply it to a range of solutions and solve a lot of the problems we can with AI capability as being one facet of how we improve things. So obviously people underestimate the AI and talk about it as a separate topic, but for us, it's much more about the user experience. How do we make the user experience with our products better so that we can contribute to making lives better at the end of the day? So you'll find ourselves, well, we've done the hardware piece with the connectivity, the analog power, the sensing, and so on. Now it's much more about the software, the user experience, how we integrate all of it very seamlessly in terms of what we need to do. Because at the end of the day, if you look at your smartphones or anything like that, what drives us towards one kind of smartphone versus the other is the experience that you have, how easy, how intuitive it is. And if we can make our products easy and intuitive, then it's very, very easy to get us to the next level in our journey. And that's kind of how we're thinking about it. We have the hardware puzzle pieces largely done. And now it's a question of how do we think about software, the user experience, and how do we get ourselves into the next level? Doesn't mean we stop innovating on hardware. That'll always continue, right? But from an overarching perspective, how do you think about it?
Got it. So, I mean, it's interesting what you said there. You talk about, first of all, I mean, traditionally everybody has been components, then systems, solutions, and you talk about user experience. Can you see yourself, not yourself, I mean, maybe Renesas and maybe other companies like yourself becoming consumer companies at some point in 20 years?
Depends on your definition of consumer. I'm not. In terms of the end users for a market, whether they're industrial, whether they're automotive, or whoever the case may be, absolutely, I'd see ourselves getting more and more into providing a higher level of capability to get their lives a lot easier, right? For example, and we're already starting to do some of that. We start to look whether it's motor control applications, right, where we can do a lot of the algorithmic work that's needed for the customers, or whether it's, for example, a great example in the AI front, right, is when you look at HVAC systems. If you wanted to look at load balancing and things like that, AI is a tremendous tool for helping in that arena. So certainly there are techniques ranging all the way from tiny ML to deep neural networks that can impact a lot of what we do. But the question really becomes then, how do you sort of implement it and make it seamless for the customer so he doesn't even know or think about, hey, this guy's solution is making my life a heck of a lot easier than going and buying a component and doing all this work myself, right? So if you can do that, then you're really transformative in the journey for the customer. And that's kind of how we look at it.
Okay. Now, this is a difficult question, I guess, but with all of us here in tech, our lives are intertwined with our work, and all the interviews I've done on this series, obviously, if I ask somebody what excites them about life, it always comes down to the business and the technology. But what excites you about life?
To me, the ability this is a good question. I mean, the ability to transform lives on whatever scale it may be is a huge factor. And I mean, the part of the journey for me right now, Nathan, quite honestly, is the ability to mentor the next generation of leaders that are emerging in this area, right? I mean, I was thinking about this when you had sent me some of your questions early on as to what would be the key takeaways, if you will, over the course of my career, right? And I'd say the ability to soak in as much as you can, the curiosity, which is certainly a given. But if you think about what makes a great engineer versus an average engineer, is the ability to deal with the unexpected, right? And that is true regardless of whether you're an engineer or any challenge that you happen to face in life, right? Because the unexpected can crop up at any minute. How do you react to it, right? So if it's an engineering problem, the greatest engineers are able to solve the problems that are unexpected. The average engineer would struggle with it, right? And all your preparation is the ability to deal with the unexpected when it crops up, when you least expect it, right? And if you can do that, regardless of which facet of life you're dealing with, you'll have made an impact. And I'd say that if there is a thing to kind of remember, I'd say that's one of the important journeys. Everything else that you do is preparation for when you deal with that scenario, how to be able to tackle it.
So I think that sort of preempts my question about what would you tell a young Sailesh. I think it's basically about being able to deal with the unexpected. But yeah, is that what you would tell young Sailesh before he was like going into a career?
Exactly, and I think it wasn't me, but I think actually Steve Jobs probably said it better than me when he said, when you go through the journey, right? It's only towards the end of the journey that you're able to connect the dots in the journey to say, hey, it made a lot of sense every step along the way. But when you're going through the journey, it's much more of an experience. But what it is preparing you is for the unexpected that crops up and the ability to be able to deal with it. Everything that you learn in the journey is a foundation for tackling those challenges that crop up in our careers, right? Or in our lives, as the case may be, and the ability to deal with it.
Many of the sort of senior entrepreneurs that I talk to, they never retire. And I know you're way too young still to retire, but what do you see yourself doing in your old age?
I know. It was funny. I was listening to David Rubenstein, who you probably knows, the chairman of the Carlyle Group. And he's saying the highest calling in nature is private equity. I often thought that's where you end up going into. No, to me, it's really the ability to, on a serious note, it's much more the ability to influence the next generation of leaders and to get them into positions where we can make a difference in the world. If we can't leave the world a better place than when we started our journey, shame on us, right? So I really think the ability to influence the next generation of leaders to think in a similar mindset rather than just solely personal enrichment, which is an artifact of whatever we achieve in our careers. I view that as being probably the most important aspect of our journey.
Well, that is such a wonderful note to end on. So, Sailesh, thank you very much.
My pleasure, Nathan, as always. And I look forward to seeing you again in person in the near future.
Me too.